Hello everyone, welcome to the first part of the winding up activity that we're going to do in Math CEO this upcoming week. This activity is going to be a hodgepodge of a lot of things that we've seen throughout the quarter to sort of reinforce the lessons that we've learned and to go deeper into some of those topics. So for the first part, our goal is we're going to continue to discuss districting systems and democracy, and in particular like how fairness might play into this. We're also going to let students practice articulating themselves, really explain themselves, their logic, their thinking, and we want to discuss systemic fairness and equity, particularly in voting systems. So, let's get started. The first part of this activity is something that we kind of saw a little bit last week, which is you want to try to split this grid into 5 districts of equal size. So each of them is going to have 5 squares, and you want to have black win the most districts, and they win a district by having a majority of squares in that district be black. So I want you to take a minute and try to see if you can figure out this puzzle on your own. So hopefully you took a minute to think about it. This one, I think, is possible to do this. And the sort of districts that came up with, you can do this one and this one, sort of group all the white ones together. And then we can do this district here, which is going to turn black because 3 of the squares are black out of 5. This district here, which will also be black because it has 3 squares out of 5. And then lastly, this T-shaped district here will also be black. Now that means that black wins 3 out of the 5 districts and wins the election. So I feel like students are going to get this quite quickly, especially because this was covered last week. So you might try introducing this one to students if they feel like they, really blew through the first square. This one can really get their juices thinking because this one is impossible. And maybe you can play around with it and see if you can reason as to why, and see if you can get students to argue why this one might be impossible. Okay, but the real meat and potatoes of this activity kind of comes a little bit later, where you're going to start messing with how these districting rules work. So you can practice the old rules on the square, and then you want to try to come up with new rules, new ways of drawing these districts and counting the votes in a way that might be more fair, right? Is it possible to sort of fix this system? And then depending on what your students suggest, you can really encourage them to test it out using these bottom squares right here. Like really put the rubber to the road, so to speak. And there's a lot of deep conversation we can have here about what does fairness mean, right? Who decides what fair looks like? And so there's a few different ways that maybe we can start thinking about this. Like, does fairness mean that a majority of voters win the election? So like, if black is the majority of voters, then black should be the result of the election, right? Or does it mean that there's proportional representation, like, say, like a UK parliamentary system? Maybe that means that we have sort of weighted districts. So districts are weighted differently depending on something like maybe their size. Maybe districts are just different sized altogether. Maybe that helps make things fairer. But then, of course, this is a very subjective question, right? Like, who decides what's fair, right? What makes a good districting system? And these are questions that not just us mathematicians and us at Math CEO are grappling with, but people on the Supreme Court have argued, for one way versus another as to what districting should look like, even just in the United States. And so there's a lot of rich conversation we can have, and I really encourage you to let students sort of speak their mind and lead the conversation. And I think we'll get a lot of rich ideas out of it.